March 12th, 1967, near Duc Pho, South Vietnam. The jungle is wet, breathing, and alive. The morning sun hasn't fully burned through the mist, and everything, soil, bark, fabric, and skin, is damp. The air tastes like metal and rot. Private First Class Danny. Ruiz kneels in the mud, his M16 resting across his lap, steam rising from the red earth beneath him. His stomach growls again. He ignores it. The same way he ignores the leeches, the swarming insects, and the distant rumble of artillery that never really stops. For 6 days, his platoon, Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry, has been pushing deeper into contested territory, hunting a Viet Cong element believed to be operating near the Song Tra Quao River. They are hungry. They are exhausted. Their uniforms cling to their bodies like wet rags, and every breath tastes of jungle decay. Staff Sergeant William Grant moves down the line, checking positions, stepping over roots and craters left by mortars. His face is streaked with dirt and camouflage paint, but his eyes are alert, sharp, constantly scanning. He knows the jungle has ears. It always does. The platoon's radio operator, Specialist Carter, keeps his PRC-25 pressed to his helmet, listening through static and faint voices. He suddenly stiffens, hand rising to adjust his headset. "Birds inbound," Carter mutters. The words ripple through the men like electricity. Some look up, others exhale with relief. A few close their eyes for just a second, savoring the news. In Vietnam, the thumping rhythm of rotor blades means life, ammo, water, medicine, and sometimes something far more precious to men running on empty. Corporal Henson smirks, wiping sweat from his cheek. "I swear, Sarge," he whispers, "if that's powdered eggs again, I'm eating my boot instead." The men chuckle under their breath, but their eyes stay alert. Even hope has to be quiet out here. The jungle punishes noise. Then, faint at first, it comes. The distant thump, thump, thump. A Huey. No, more than one. The sound grows, cutting through the humidity like a blade. Birds scatter from the canopy, branches tremble. The platoon rises into a half-crouch, weapons pointed outward, eyes on the tree line. Resupply landings could turn into ambushes without warning. Everyone knows that. The Hueys break through the haze moments later, their olive-drab bodies streaked with mud and oil, White Star insignias flashing in the sunlight. Their rotors whip the jungle into a frenzy, bending the tall grass and sending dust spiraling into the sky. Private Ruiz squints upward. Even after months in country, the sight of a Huey still hits him in the chest. To grunts on the ground, helicopters aren't just machines, they're angels, chariots, lifelines. They bring men in, take men out, and keep the war moving in places no truck could ever reach. The first Huey flares and descends, skid spreading into the mud as the door gunner scans the jungle with his M60. The smell of aviation fuel mixes with the smell of wet earth. Sergeant Grant shouts over the rotor wash, "Perimeter tight, nobody relaxes." 2 crewmen hop out, ducking beneath the spinning blades, dragging metal containers and olive-drab thermos cans toward the waiting platoon. The men watch, wide-eyed. The containers aren't ammo crates, they aren't medical kits. Ruiz blinks once, thinking his brain must be playing tricks on him. Food containers, large ones. The Huey lifts again and banks away, making room for the second helicopter. As it hovers, another blast of hot rotor wind slams into the platoon, shredding leaves into confetti. Within moments, the landing zone is littered with steam-filled containers. Real, hot food. Not cold rations, not sea rations from dented cans, not dry crackers that taste like dust. Steam. In the middle of the jungle. Private Ruiz stares, dumbfounded as the lids come off. Mashed potatoes, gravy, green beans, meatloaf. Hot meatloaf. Its smell rising into the humid morning air like something out of a dream. The entire platoon freezes, Some men laugh. One curses in disbelief. A few just kneel there, grinning like children at a carnival. What they don't know, not yet, is that a few hundred yards away, hidden beneath the earth in a camouflaged spider hole, a small North Vietnamese recon team is silently watching this scene unfold through slits in the foliage. And what those men are witnessing will shake them in a way bullets and bombs never could. Because to them, this moment makes no sense at all. No army should be able to fight like this. No army should be able to eat like this. Not in this jungle. Not in this war. March 12th, 1967. The same hour. One ridge to the east. Beneath a mat of damp leaves, bamboo, and hand-woven brushwork, Sergeant Phan Van Min of the 2nd Company, 22nd Regiment, lies motionless in a spider hole barely wider than his shoulders. His cheek rests against the packed dirt wall, his breath shallow as he peers through a slit in the camouflage cover. Sweat trickles down his spine. He has been in this cramped hide for nearly 16 hours, surviving on a handful of rice and a dry fish strip that still clings to his teeth. His stomach aches, but his orders are clear. Observe, record, and wait. He was prepared to witness the enemy. He was not prepared to witness this. Through the foliage below, he sees the Americans laughing, their helmets bobbing as they cluster around silver containers that leak steam into the sky. Steam. Hot food. Out here. Delivered by machines that can land anywhere like giant dragonflies. Min blinks twice, thinking perhaps exhaustion is distorting the scene. But there is no mistake. These Americans, filthy, sweat-soaked, just as worn down by the jungle as his own men, are eating like they are home. Not cold rice balls, not spoiled cassava, not scraps they must hide from flies. Hot meals, in metal trays, with meat. He feels his jaw tighten. His spotter, Private Bow, whispers, voice barely audible over the insects. Is it hot food, comrade? Min doesn't answer at first. He studies the landing zone through his field glasses. US troops stacking ammo, distributing water cans, and ladling steaming portions of food with metal spoons. Not rushed, not desperate, not afraid of running out. It is the rhythm of an army that expects more to come. An army supplied so endlessly that war does not starve them, exhaust them, or bend them. Min lowers the glasses slowly. Yes, he mutters. Hot meals. Bao swallows. But how? Min doesn't know, and that, more than anything else, chills him. Back on the LZ, Private Daniel Ruiz shovels a mouthful of potatoes into his mouth, closes his eyes, and actually groans. The flavor isn't perfect, but in this place, in a land that smells of rot and fear, it tastes like civilization. He glances to his right and sees Corporal Henson laughing into a tin cup of coffee. Hot coffee. Grant stands a few feet away, eating quickly while speaking with the Huey crew chief. The jungle wind softens as the last helicopter banks away, disappearing into the haze. Slowly, the natural sounds return. Cicadas, flies, distant gunfire, a far-off thud of artillery. But the soldiers don't shovel their food down like starving men. They eat calmly, almost casually, as if this moment, this luxury, isn't a miracle at all, but simply the routine rhythm of their war. That detail strikes Min harder than the meal itself. Americans are not surviving the jungle. They are operating in it, moving in it, fighting in it, eating comfortably in it. Min's own unit, by contrast, has taken 3 days to maneuver into this position. They carried sacks of rice that now stink of mold. They boil water in tin cups when they can manage a fire that won't give away their position. When rations run out, they forage. Sometimes they catch rats, sometimes they catch nothing. He suddenly realizes that this, right here, is why American patrols move so fast. Why they can relocate, reinforce, or pursue targets with frightening speed. Their stomachs are full. Their legs have strength. Their morale is fed as much as their bodies. Bao whispers again. If they are resupplied like this every day, how do we... Quiet, Min snaps. But the question hangs between them. How do you fight an army that never runs out of food, bullets, or strength? Min takes out his notebook, hands still trembling, and begins to write. Meanwhile, Staff Sergeant Grant steps away from the platoon, scanning the trees. He doesn't know there are eyes on him. He doesn't know that just beyond the ferns and palms lies an enemy recon team making notes that will reach an NVA battalion commander by nightfall. He only knows one thing. The Hueys will be back tomorrow, and the day after. And as long as his men hold the jungle, the air will feed them. Grant finishes his tray, wipes his mouth, and gives the order. All right, boys, eat fast. We move in 15. As the platoon prepares to push deeper into hostile ground, Min silently closes his notebook and signals to bow. It is time to report what they have seen. What Min does not realize is that this report will shake more than just a battalion staff meeting. It will spark disbelief, frustration, and eventually a bitter realization among NVA leadership. The Americans are playing a different kind of war, one that runs on wings and engines. Night falls fast in Juk Pho. When darkness comes to the jungle, it doesn't fade in gently. It drops like a curtain. One moment there is humid green and humming life, and the next, there is blackness so complete that even the moon struggles to cut through it. The Americans settle into a silent perimeter, trip flares planted, claymores wired, rifles resting just inches from tired hands. But in the tree line, two men do not rest. Sergeant Min and Private Bao crawl backward through the brush, inch by inch, careful not to snap a twig or disturb a leaf. Only when they have put a full kilometer between themselves and Bravo Company do they rise from their bellies and begin the trek north toward their battalion's underground command. The night is long. Their stomachs gnaw with hunger. Mosquitoes bite relentlessly. But Min's mind is sharper than ever. He replays what he saw over and over. Steam, trays, hot food, delivered by air. In the field, Bao finally breaks the silence. Comrade, do you think command will believe us? Min walks on for several steps before replying. No, he says honestly, but they must. March 13th, 1967. 0420 hours. A hidden NVA tunnel complex northwest of Juk Pho. Min stands at stiff attention in a cramped chamber lit by a single oil lamp. Shadowy figures sit before him on wooden stools. Battalion staff officers, their faces drawn, uniforms damp, boots caked with mud. A field map of Quang Ngoy province hangs on the dirt wall, marked with grease pencil and string. Major Tran Hu Lok, commander of the battalion, leans forward, fingers interlocked. Sergeant Min, the major says, you claim the Americans delivered hot meals to their frontline unit by helicopter. Is this accurate? Yes, sir, Min replies. I saw it personally. Their platoon received not only ammunition and water, but prepared food. Hot food. Enough for every man. A murmur ripples through the room. One officer scoffs. Impossible. The Americans are wasteful, yes, but they are not fools. Fuel is precious. Helicopters are vulnerable. They would not risk aircraft for dining comfort. It is not comfort, comrade, Min answers firmly. It is strategy. The major raises an eyebrow. Explain. Min takes a breath. He forces his voice to remain steady. Sir, we march for days with sacks of rice. When it rains, the rice spoils. When we cook, the smoke threatens our cover. When we are hungry, we slow down. When we are tired, we hesitate. But the Americans, they cook miles away. They deliver meals to the jungle. They eat well. They move fast. They do not weaken. Silence follows. Min continues, voice low. We fight with willpower. They fight with engines. That is why they always appear where we do not expect them. They do not carry their war on their backs. They fly it in. The major studies him, saying nothing. Another officer clears his throat. Even if this is true, it changes nothing. The Americans have machines. We have the will of the people. We endure. That is our strength. Min nods but does not retreat. Yes, comrade, we endure. But endurance feeds the soul, not the muscles. Our men are starving in the jungle while theirs drink hot coffee and eat beef and potatoes between patrols. Our soldiers are heroes, but they are not gods. Hunger is hunger. The lamp flickers. The major slowly exhales and dismisses the staff officers with a gesture. When only Min remains, the commander stands and steps closer, speaking quietly so the others can't hear. You did well to report this, he says, but understand, this information will not be welcomed. Our doctrine is built on the idea that the Americans are weak outside their bases. If your report is right, then their reach is far greater than our superiors want to admit. Min bows his head slightly. I report only what I saw, sir. And you will continue to do so, the major replies. Because if the Americans can feed their front line this way, then we must learn how to break that system, or this war will bleed us dry. The major rolls up the map. His voice hardens. Go rest, Sergeant Min. You will go back out at first light. I need more intelligence on these helicopters. Their routes, their patterns, their landing zones. Min salutes. Yes, sir. As he exits the command chamber and descends into the tunnels where men sleep shoulder to shoulder in stale air, he realizes something unsettling. Today, he reported a sight. Tomorrow, he will report a threat. And soon, he fears, he may be reporting a truth no one in Hanoi wants to face. That the Americans are not bound to the jungle at all. They simply fly over it. March 14th, 1967. First light. South Vietnam. A pale mist rises from the jungle floor as Bravo Company stirs awake. Rifles are checked, boots are laced, and ponchos are shaken free of dew. The men speak little in the mornings. Conversation wastes breath, and breath is precious in air that feels more like water than atmosphere. Private Ruiz rubs sleep from his eyes and tightens the straps on his pack. Ahead lies another push through thick brush and enemy territory. Staff Sergeant Grant moves like a ghost through the trees, tapping shoulders and giving silent signals. The platoon forms up in staggered file. Before the sun fully clears the horizon, Bravo Company disappears into the jungle once more, moving on full stomachs, with confidence in their stride and the memory of last night's hot meal still warming their morale. But a mile away, unseen, Min is awake too. He crouches with binoculars on a low ridge, bow beside him, watching the sky with the patience of a hunter. His orders are simple. Determine how these resupply birds move, how often they return, and how vulnerable they might be. Hours pass. Cicadas scream, sweat beads, leeches cling to wet socks. Min endures it all without shifting his position. Noon nears when a distant vibration, deep and rhythmic, begins to tremble the treetops. Then, like clockwork, the sound arrives. Thump, thump, thump. Min raises the binoculars. 3 Hueys, flying in loose formation. Not fast, not evasive, calm. Like men delivering mail, not risking death in contested jungle. Min notes everything. Their altitude, heading, spacing, and timing. He notices something else as well. The Americans are not just resupplying one platoon. They are supplying many. The Hueys break formation, each banking toward different directions, north, west, and southeast. Min's stomach turns. This is not improvisation. This is a network. Wherever American infantry roam, the sky follows. Midday, deep jungle. Bravo Company halts beneath towering broadleaf trees. The jungle canopy is so thick that only spears of sunlight reach the ground. Sergeant Grant kneels over the map, while Lieutenant Harker speaks quietly into the radio. Despite the humidity and the weight of their gear, the troops stand steady. Morale is intact. Their eyes are alert. Ruiz leans against a tree, sipping from a full canteen. Nearby, another private mutters, "Where do you think we head after this, Danny?" Ruiz shrugs. Wherever they tell us, doesn't matter. We'll get chow again tonight. That sentence, said casually without a second thought, would have sounded insane to any fighting man in Min's army. In a single day, the Americans expect hot food, fresh water, ammunition, medical support, extraction if ambushed, air cover if cornered. Ruiz doesn't realize it, but he is living inside a military ecosystem unlike any the world has seen before, and Min now understands it with painful clarity. Late afternoon, NVA Tunnel Command. Min reports again, dirt still on his elbows and sweat dried to salt on his collar. The battalion staff leans in as he speaks, describing the staggered helicopter routes and rotating schedules. When he finishes, Major Locke folds his arms. So, the commander says slowly, you are suggesting the Americans can deliver supplies to any platoon in this province, at any hour, and sustain them indefinitely? Min nods once. Yes, sir. And based on what I observed, they can do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Silence. Every man in the room understands what that means. The Viet Cong and NVA have always survived by outlasting enemies. French, colonial armies, warlords. But this is an enemy that never runs out. An enemy that can project strength in the deepest jungle and remain strong. Major Locke finally speaks, voice low. We will send word to regimental command, and Hanoi will hear of this. Min exhales, but there is no relief in him. Because now he knows. The American strength is not just their rifles or their airstrikes. It is their mobility, their logistics, their machine that never sleeps. A machine built on fuel, pilots, mechanics, radio operators, metal, and motion. A machine that feeds its men so they can fight at full strength every hour of every day, while his own country bleeds itself thin, simply marching through mud. Min leaves the headquarters with a heavy heart. He fought the French. He has fought the Americans for 2 years. But this is the first time he has felt something creeping into his chest that he cannot swallow down. Doubt. As the sun sets once again over Duke Pho and Bravo Company prepares for another night position, Staff Sergeant Grant receives a radio message through Carter's headset. Resupply scheduled. Same time. Same LZ. Hot rations confirmed. Ruiz smiles. The platoon relaxes. But this time, the jungle is watching with new eyes. Because Min's report has set something in motion. Something that will not end with observation. It will end with retaliation. March 16th, 1967. Quang Ngai Province, under the canopy's dark ceiling. The jungle feels different now. Not to Bravo Company, they march with the steady rhythm of soldiers who believe in the sky above them. But to the men hunting them, the jungle is no longer merely terrain. It is now a chessboard. And the helicopters are the pieces that must be removed from it. Inside a concealed bunker dug into the side of a hill, 8 NVA officers sit around a rough table made of planks and ammo crates. Cigarette smoke curls beneath the low rafters. The atmosphere is tense. A runner has just delivered a message from regiment headquarters. Min's report has been forwarded to Division Command, and the order has returned swiftly. Begin targeting American helicopter resupply. Priority objective. Major Locke leans over the table, tapping a grease pencil against a map marked with landing zones and river valleys. They are feeding their units, the Major says, which means their units do not slow down. They do not break. They do not stagger. So we will hunger them instead. An older commissar scowls. We cannot stop their planes. No, Locke replies, but we may not need to. The Huey is not a god. It must land. And when it lands, it can be bled. To Min, who stands silently along the bunker wall, the message is clear. His reconnaissance has forced a shift in doctrine. The Americans had revealed their strength. Now the NVA would define its next move. Not with brute force, but with ambush, timing, and exploitation of predictability. Locke continues. We will identify their landing zones. We will seed them with explosives. mines, tripwire charges. If we cannot destroy the helicopter in the sky, we will destroy the men who gather beneath it. A murmur of agreement fills the cramped room. For larger operations, Locke adds, our Chinese comrades have already supplied DSHK heavy machine guns. They can kill a helicopter if positioned correctly. As more arrive, we will build a ring of fire through the valleys. The Americans rely on their flying carts, so we will turn the air into a graveyard. Min feels a chill. The war is changing. Meanwhile, Bravo Company, 3 kilometers away. The jungle is a labyrinth of bamboo and broadleaf shadows. Every branch is heavy with moisture. Every root threatens to twist an ankle. But the platoon moves with confidence. Noon approaches, and even though sweat drips down their backs and mosquitoes feast on their necks, the men know what comes next. Hot chow, hot coffee, hot morale. Sergeant Grant lifts a hand. Halt signal. The platoon kneels in silence. Carter raises the radio handset. Bird dog to mother hen. LZ secure. Standing by for angels. Static crackles back in reply. Ruiz smiles faintly. Right on time, he whispers. They begin clearing the small landing zone, snapping saplings, flattening brush, kicking out dirt to widen the footprint. The same routine, the same location, the same expectation. And above them, in the distant blue, the faint thump, thump, thump begins to return. Back at NVA command, dusk approaches. Major Locke dismisses the officers and motions Min to stay behind. You will not return to observation, Locke says. I am assigning you to a new unit. A strike unit, Min asks. The major nods. Specially selected men. Good shots, patient, mobile. Your mission is simple. You will watch for their helicopters, and you will kill them when they come. Min says nothing. He had wanted his commanders to understand the threat, but now that they do, he feels the weight of the consequence. He has spent days witnessing the machine that feeds and fuels the Americans. Now, he must take part in starving it. The major places a hand on Min's shoulder. This war will not be won by fighting how we wish. It will be won by fighting how we must. If the Americans choose to live in the sky, Min, then we will teach them that the sky can still burn. Outside, somewhere in the dark canopy, a single monkey shrieks and falls silent. March 16th, 1967. Late afternoon, Bravo Company. The Huey descends. Rota wash tears through the brush, but this time, 2 miles away, Min and his newly assigned strike team crouch in silence, studying a different LZ through foliage. A DSHK heavy machine gun, broken down into pieces and carried on shoulders, lies beside them, waiting to be assembled. They will not strike today, or tomorrow, but they will wait. They must learn the rhythm of the American sky, the timing, the habits, and when the rhythm is predictable, that is when it will be broken. The resupply hits the ground. Steam rises again. Laughter carries faintly through the jungle. Min watches, unblinking. This, he whispers to Bao and his new gun crew, is the vein that feeds their war. We will cut it. And when we do, they will bleed. The jungle holds its breath. March 18th, 1967. Midday. A hollowed clearing 3 clicks east of the Song Tra Kao. The landing zone had been prepared for them for days, flattened, trodden, and marked by the same routine that had lulled American crews into a sense of predictability. Bravo Company's LZ was almost ritual now. Saplings snapped aside, a small ring cleared where the Huey could sit. A perimeter of men with M16s and Claymore arcs ready. The pilots had flown the route dozens of times. The crews knew the patterns of the weather and the trees. To men who rely on machines, routine becomes habit. Habit becomes vulnerability. On a narrow ridge overlooking the LZ, Min and his detachment crouched like statues. Their DSHK lay stripped in 3 parts, each segment wrapped in oilcloth, and passed quietly among low-voiced men. Tripwires were buried in leaf litter along the approach paths. Small charges, home-forged, packed with nails and bitumen, were set beneath loose soil. 2 machine gunners took positions in a collapsed termite mound. Others spread along the tree line, eyes trained on the distant shimmer of heat that betrayed the clearing. Min felt nothing like joy. He felt only a cold professionalism honed by months of listening to the beast of war and learning where it breathed. He checked his watch. The formation would arrive in minutes. Their orders were precise: disable the aircraft, kill or scatter the men who gathered beneath it, withdraw before gunships could arrive. Down in the LZ, Bravo Company moved with the calm speed of men fed and ready. Private Ruiz wiped his hands on his trousers and stuffed the last of his hot meatloaf into his mouth. Henson joked about saving a spoon. Lieutenant Harker walked the edge of the clearing, speaking into the radio about routes and checkpoints. Sergeant Grant breathed in the moment. Another resupply, another morale boost. No one expected the sky to turn lethal. The first Huey came in low, rotors kicking swirling columns of debris into the air. The door gunner swept the perimeter with his M60, scanning for movement. The aircraft settled, skids sinking into the mud just as planned. Crewmen leapt out and began passing down pallets and metal carriers. The second and third birds broke formation to circle high, a standard tactical posture. Then, exactly where the men had placed them, hidden under leaves and masked by ferns, the tripwires pulled taut. A sharpened wooden stake triggered a detonator. A small burst erupted under the main landing skid of the first Huey. The explosion didn't topple the aircraft, but it rocked it hard, throwing crewmen off balance and spilling equipment. The door gunner cursed. The pilot tried to gain altitude. The DSHK opened fire from the ridge. Its first belt sang a long, terrible song through the sky. Tracers cutting across rotor blades, sending shrapnel into metal and men. One round slammed into the tail boom of the second Huey, and the sound of twisting metal filled the clearing. The aircraft lurched, then pitched into a hard bank. Men on the ground screamed as the injured copter clipped a tree and rolled, sending a plume of black smoke and burning fuel into the canopy. Screams and shouts swallowed the morning air. Chaos is a unique force, fast, indiscriminate, and brutal. Marines and soldiers sprinted for cover. Some men went down, blood blossoming on khaki and green. The Huey that had been delivering hot food became a burning beast that snapped and roared like a wounded animal. A medevac that was supposed to be a lifeline now became the thing that needed saving. Sergeant Grant, boots sliding in the churned mud, barked orders with a soldier's calm honed in the quickness of panic. Lay down suppressive fire. Drag the wounded to cover. Secure the LZ. Call for air support. Specialist Carter keyed his radio with hands that trembled. Bird dog to mother hen. We are taking heavy ground fire. 1 bird down. Repeat. 1 bird down. Multiple casualties. Request immediate gunship support. But the air above was no longer safe, and the pilots circling high had to keep distance to avoid the DSHK and the heavy machine guns that now peppered the tree line. Smoke and flame merged with the smell of burning rubber and hot meat in the air. A grotesque echo of the very comfort the Americans had enjoyed hours ago. Min watched from the ridge, hardly daring to breathe. He felt no exultation, only the professional numbness of a man who had done his duty. Around him, his crew poured another belt into the hovering birds, then folded away as the gunships finally answered the call. Whirlwind of armor and fire that would make the jungle itself shake. The NVA pulled back down the ridge, leaving behind the scattered bodies, the wounded groans, and the residue of their blow. The Americans countered with everything at hand: helicopter-mounted miniguns, artillery that boomed from a safer distance, and thundering foot patrols that surged into the tree line. By dusk, the LZ was a crater of churned earth, a smoking wreck of trees and men carrying men. The Huey was a charred skeleton. Bodies were counted. Friends grieved. The price of breaking the sky was now painfully clear to both sides. In the confusion that night, a sweep and clear operation moved through the charred perimeter. Bravo Company, reinforced by nearby elements, tightened into line and pushed outward, methodically flushing pockets of resistance. It was during this frantic, brutal clearing that a small group of NVA recon fighters, young, tired, and badly wounded, was overrun and taken prisoner. They were found in a shallow foxhole, their weapons mud-caked and their faces pinched with hunger. They were brought back under rough guard, faces blank but eyes wide. At the processing point, while medics bandaged smoke-blackened skin and officers wrote reports, an interpreter began to question the prisoners. The men answered with a mixture of stoic silence and startled confusion when shown the smouldering parts of the wrecked Huey and the torn food containers that had been scattered across the clearing. One of the captured, his sleeves rolled, lips cracked from thirst, stared at a dented thermos and let out a strangled laugh. The interpreter translated his words into English, the phrase coming like a wet stone into the American officer's ears. They bring hot food in the jungle. How do they live like this? Another prisoner, younger, pushed back his hair and looked at the Americans who tended the wounded with a kind of baffled reverence. We thought theirs was a myth, he said through the interpreter. We heard of them, machines, helicopters, but not of meals. We thought it was propaganda. To see meat and coffee in the trees, it is like seeing a city in the middle of a mountain. For Sergeant Grant, who had just watched a friend die and a bird burn, the prisoner's words landed oddly. Part accusation, part confession, and part stunned admiration. He felt anger, grief, and a strange, awkward pity as he listened. In the days that followed, the downed helicopter would be cleared. The dead mourned, and the soldiers who had eaten hot meals that morning would recall the taste with bitter fondness. The NVA prisoners would be moved to a small detention area, farther back, where they would be questioned, fed, and watched. And in quiet, guarded moments, each of them would speak not of tactics or politics, but of a single, simple human astonishment. Hot food in the middle of nowhere, delivered by flying machines. An impossible comfort that made the American soldier look less like a distant enemy and more like a man living in a different world. March 19th, 1967. A makeshift US field holding area, southwest of Duc Pho. The jungle is quiet after violence, a haunting, unnatural quiet that settles over broken trees, scorched earth, and abandoned shell casings. Bravo Company is licking its wounds. New razor wire snakes around the perimeter, claymores now planted in deeper layers, rifles always within arm's reach, even when men sleep. In a small tent patched from ponchos and camouflage netting, Captain Avery sits across from a folding table and stares at the 3 NVA prisoners brought in from the shattered ridge. 2 are barely adults. 1, the older of the group, gaunt and hollow-eyed, stares at the canvas floor as an interpreter kneels between them. The older prisoner's name is Corporal Lei Thang Nu. Dirt clings to his hair and uniform. His hands are bandaged from burns received in the helicopter's fiery crash zone. Burns not even caused by the Americans. His own attack, his own plan, turned chaotic by the cruelty of war. Captain Avery leans forward. Ask him again, he says quietly. Why did his unit target the resupply? Was it just opportunity or planned? The interpreter nods, speaks soft Vietnamese, and waits. Corporal Nu raises his eyes, not in defiance, not in fear, but in exhaustion. He answers. The interpreter translates. He says it was planned. Your helicopters make you too strong, too fast. You do not weaken the way soldiers should weaken in the jungle. The captain exhales slowly. And what about the food? The interpreter repeats the question. The younger prisoner shifts, embarrassed. Corporal Nu pauses before answering. When he does, his voice is low. He says, they could not believe it was real. That you bring cooked food to your soldiers, hot meals, coffee, in the jungle. Captain Avery says nothing at first. His eyes drift to a metal thermos sitting on a crate behind him. The same kind dropped during the chaotic ambush. He listens as the interpreter continues translating Nu's final words. He says, "You're fighting a different war, a rich man's war, a war from the sky, not the ground." Those words sit in the air like smoke. That afternoon, Bravo Company Perimeter Private Ruiz sits on a fallen log, cleaning his rifle. His face is hard, his appetite gone. A pair of Hueys thunder overhead, but instead of comfort, the sound now brings a tightness in his chest. Henson crouches beside him, lighting a cigarette with shaking fingers. "They got Carter good," Henson mutters. "He never even got to finish his tray. Told me last night he wanted to open a diner back home after this." Ruiz doesn't respond immediately. After a long silence, he finally says, "We thought we couldn't be touched during chow. Thought the sky kept us safe. Guess that was stupid." Henson flicks ash into the mud. "It wasn't stupid," he says. "We just got comfortable, and comfortable gets you killed." Sergeant Grant approaches and kneels beside them. "Listen up," Grant says quietly. "The CO just passed word. New LZs every drop. No repeats. We'll tighten security. We adapt and we keep moving. That's the only way." Ruiz nods, but he can't shake what feels wrong inside him. He had believed in the rhythm, the routine, the expectation that the Huey wasn't just transport. It was invincible. The war has just corrected him. That night, in the American interrogation tent, Corporal Nu sits cross-legged, sipping from a tin cup of broth. He didn't expect to be fed. He didn't expect medical care. He especially didn't expect coffee. Still warm, handed to him by the same men he tried to kill. He looks at the steam rising from the cup. To his men, hot meals were something earned only in rear bases, after days of hunger. To the Americans, hot meals were something delivered into battle, as casually as letters or cigarettes. Nu speaks softly to the interpreter. He says, the interpreter relays, he does not understand how men can fight while living so comfortably. Captain Avery folds his arms. "We don't fight because we're fed," Avery replies through the interpreter. "We feed ourselves so we can fight. That's the difference." Nu listens, eyes lowered. "It is not the same war," he finally whispers. The interpreter translates directly, word for word. He says, "We fight to endure. You fight to continue. We suffer to win. You supply to win. We are both soldiers, but we are not in the same war." For the first time, Captain Avery truly hears the prisoner, not as an enemy, but as a mirror. Vietnam is not one war being fought. It is two wars happening on the same ground, one powered by will, mud, and sacrifice, the other powered by engines, logistics, and fuel. Both brutal, both costly, both real, but never the same. The next morning, March 20th, the prisoners are moved to a larger POW facility for transport and questioning. Before they are driven away, Ruiz watches them from a distance. He expects to feel anger. What he feels instead is something closer to bewilderment. The jungles of Vietnam had always been merciless, but for a few brief weeks, Bravo Company had carried warmth through it. Steam, potatoes, meatloaf, coffee, and they had believed it made them untouchable. Now they know better. And so do their enemies. The war in the jungle has entered a new phase. The Americans will adapt. The NVA will counter. The sky will feed men, and the ground will try to starve them. The Huey will fly again. Ambushes will return. And soldiers on both sides will learn the same truth. Comfort in war is temporary. Hunger is patient. And the jungle belongs to no one. March 21st, 1967. Chu Lai Air Base, South Vietnam. The flight line never sleeps. Even before sunrise, the tarmac trembles under the weight of machines spitting exhaust into the humid dawn. Hueys, Chinooks, and caribou transports swarm the runway like steel insects preparing for migration. Crew chiefs in grease-streaked fatigues shout over engine noise. Mechanics crawl beneath fuselages with oil cans and wrenches. Pilots sip black coffee while scanning maintenance boards and mission maps. This is where the real war breathes. Not in the foxholes, not in the mud, not in the jungle ambushes, but here where parts, fuel, and food are turned into motion. Captain Avery, fresh from the field, walks alongside Major Daniels, an air cavalry logistics officer whose entire world revolves around keeping rotor blades spinning. Daniels motions toward a row of steaming containers being loaded into the belly of a Chinook. "You know what those are?" the Major shouts over the roar. Avery nods. "Rations. The hot kind." Daniels flashes a tired grin. 5,000 meals. By sundown, half of them will be in hands gripping rifles. Avery watches as forklifts carry metal crates marked water, ammo, MRE, hot, medical. "How long can we sustain this pace?" Avery finally asks. Daniels doesn't answer right away. He walks a few steps, eyes following a crew as they sling a rotor assembly into place. "As long as the engines turn," he says at last. "As long as the fuel convoys keep rolling. As long as the repair shops don't fall behind." The men in the field think the Huey is their lifeline. And it is. But the machine that feeds that lifeline is bigger than they can imagine. He points across the sprawling base. "You want to know the truth? Out there, you saw a helicopter burn. Here, I see one get reborn every day." Avery absorbs that. He suddenly understands. Helicopter resupply isn't a luxury. It is an entire ecosystem, a beating industrial heart. Meanwhile, 50 miles away in the jungle, Bravo Company hacks through undergrowth, mud sucking at their boots with every step. The smell of burned metal still lingers in their memory. They are quieter now, more alert. The illusion of safety is gone, but the hunger for survival is sharper than ever. Ruiz keeps one thought pinned in the back of his mind. The Huey will return. But next time, we'll be ready. The radio crackles on Carter's replacement set. "Resupply tonight. New LZ coordinates. Gunship escort confirmed." Grant gives a single nod. Then we move fast and pick a place they don't expect. The platoon surges forward. North of them, beneath the earth, in a tunnel deep enough to swallow sound, Min crouches beside a lantern and reviews hand-drawn maps. His strike detachment has doubled in size. Chinese Type 67 machine guns have arrived. 2 DSHK mounts have been relocated. And most importantly, they have learned something. Not every landing zone is an opportunity. Only patterns can be exploited. Min circles 3 points on the map. They will not return to the same clearing, he tells his lieutenant. But they will choose familiar features. Flat rises, dry ground, open canopy. We look for these. We wait. And when they commit, we strike again. His lieutenant nods. "And if their gunships escort them?" Min answers with a voice stripped of emotion. "Then we kill faster than the gunships can respond." Back at Chulai, afternoon, Major Daniels leads Avery through a hangar filled with Huey airframes. Some intact, some torn open like rib cages. "These birds," Daniels says, tapping a tail boom, "aren't invincible. We know that. But the trick isn't to keep them from being shot. The trick is making sure there's always another one ready to fly." He hands Avery a clipboard containing casualty and loss reports from the past week. 5 Hueys down in your AO alone, Daniels says. But we launched 28 successful resupply runs during the same time frame. That's the math of air mobility. They can kill the bird, but they can't kill the system, not unless they learn to starve it. Avery exhales slowly. The war suddenly looks much larger than Bravo Company's tragedy. Daniels gestures to an open hangar door where a fresh, olive-drab UH-1 sits fueled and ready. "You lost one in the jungle yesterday," he says. "By sunrise tomorrow, a new crew will be flying that route again. That's the difference between our doctrine and theirs. When we fall, we replace. When they fall, they endure." He pauses. "2 different wars, Captain. Same battlefield." Nightfall, Bravo Company, temporary LZ. The distant thump, thump, thump returns. This time, the men of Bravo Company do not smile. They kneel deeper. They watch the tree line. Claymores are wired. M60s mounted. Flares primed. Gunships hover just above the darkness like silent predators. The Huey descends with its belly full of steam and strength. Ruiz grips his rifle and thinks, "We will eat, we will fight, and we will not be caught again." But just beyond the darkness, Min waits with equal resolve. The Americans will feed their war with machines. The NVA will feed theirs with patience. And the jungle, ancient, indifferent, unowned, will swallow whatever both sides spill into its soil. March 24th, 1967. Dawn leaks through the canopy like a shy secret. The clearing where Bravo Company had been struck a week ago is marked now. Charred tree stumps, scorched earth, and the twisted skeleton of the downed Huey hauled away piece by piece. Where men once laughed over steaming trays, the land holds a quieter testimony. Smudges of ash, a dented thermos half buried in mud, and a single, forgotten spoon that glints like a small bone. At Chu Lai, Captain Avery sits across from Major Daniels again. The hum of the bass a steady bass under their conversation. They have read the reports and watched the footage. They know the enemy adjusted. They know how close blood came to rewriting doctrine. Daniels does not look triumphant. He looks tired and practical. "We lost men," Avery says, his voice low. "We lost a bird. But the resupply worked before the ambush, and it will work again. How do we make it less tempting to the enemy? How do we make ourselves less predictable?" Daniels taps a pen against a worn logbook. "Vary the LZs," he answers. "Change the timing. Don't do it at the same light. Use decoy drops. Mix it up between Chinooks, UH-1s, and vectored sling loads from caribous. Invest in more suppression for the landing zone. Gunships wait farther out until we have visual confirmation. And above all, increase intel on the ground. Get our own eyes watching the ridgelines." Avery nods, thinking of his men. Carter's laugh, Henson's cigarette, Ruiz's stubborn grin. They will do it. They must. The color of the war is moving in shades neither side likes. Meanwhile, in a dugout outside Juk Pho, Min writes a report. He composes the words carefully. They must be precise, useful, and unembellished. He notes times, routes, types of aircraft, and patterns of supply. He includes maps drawn with a steady hand and margins filled with tactical suggestions, the best vantage points, likely approaches, and recommendations for booby traps and anti-air positions. He also writes another thing, one not in any tactical manual, the faces of the men who ate meat and coffee, and the way their laughter had filled the humid air. He writes of the smell of gravy and the way steam rose into the treetops like an insult to starvation. He writes so that commanders who have never seen this might imagine it. He wants them to feel the odd pull he felt, the mix of hatred and awe that the sight of another man's hot meal inspired. When he finishes, he folds the report and hands it to a runner who will take it to regimental staff and onward to division. He watches the young man disappear into the green, knowing that the next time he reads the reply, it will command movement. More DSHKs, more mines, more traps. The echo of his observation will spread outward like a current. Back at the field hospital, where ironies collect like bandages, Sergeant Grant feeds a young medic who works through nights. The medic jokes about being a chef now, ladling broth into canteens while men stitch themselves together. "You think it's worth it?" Grant asks suddenly. "Worth what?" the medic replies without looking up. "Feeding them out here. All this logistics, the risk, the birds." The medic pauses, ladle suspended over a bucket of soup. "It's worth it if one man goes home," he says. "There are men who will keep going because they had coffee in the morning. There are men who will place their lives in a machine because the machine gives them something like home. You can measure worth in strategy, sure, but also in potatoes and gravy." Grant nods slowly. The words are small, but they are true in a way that maps cannot capture. In the hours that follow, orders circulate. Section new protocols roll down from division, randomize LZs, pre-strike suspected anti-air positions, increase gunship orbit times, incorporate reconnaissance drones, man-carried scout teams to watch likely ridgelines. A new section at Chu Lai is dedicated just to rations and rapid reload, a petty kingdom of cold steel and hands that make hot food possible in a tree hole. Min's tactics become known. His strike team's success spurs a flurry of countermeasures, some brutal, some clever. There are reprisals against villages suspected of aiding NVA observers. There are deeper operations to clear ridgelines before resupply runs. There are nights when neither side sleeps, each listening for the other's rhythm. And yet, despite adjustments, the basic truth remains stubborn as a stump. The Americans could fly supplies. The NVA could threaten the sky. The jungle held both answers and questions, and time itself continued to teach both sides. 2 weeks later, a letter arrives in a mail sack bound for Private Ruiz. His hands tremble as he reads a short paragraph from his mother. "You have always eaten well at home. Don't forget to tell us what the food tastes like out there. We pray for you." He smiles sadly, thinking of Henson, of Carter, of the man whose list of future plans included a small diner. He folds the letter and tucks it into his inner vest, close to the place where the taste of hot meatloaf still lingers. Across the same battlefield, Corporal Nu reads a message too, words stitched by a weary comrade. "We must learn. We must adapt. We cannot allow them to make us starve." He rolls the paper between calloused fingers, feeling the pressure of strategy that has become personal. These men on opposite sides carry their battle not only in rifles and maps, but in the small things that remind them of home. Soup ladles and thermoses, letters and notebooks. The war, in its terrible calculus, had come to count those small things as ammunition. As spring edges toward summer, the air grows thicker with oil and insect life. The Hueys continue to thump across the sky. New tactics bleed into operation orders. A testy piece of routine settles, one that includes sporadic triumphs and fresh tragedies. The resupply system endures because it must. The NVA counters because it must. And men like Ruiz and Min continue to wake in the damp world between trees, living one uncertain day at a time. The jungle keeps its spoils and its secrets. The men keep their memories of hot meals in the trees, of burned birds, of prisoners who could not reconcile the two worlds they had seen. Those memories, stitched together, become a quiet ledger of the war itself. April 4th, 1967. Hill 482, south of the Tra Bong Valley. The rain has been falling for 3 days. Not the kind of rain that comes and goes, but the heavy, endless sheet that eats landscapes. Visibility shrinks to 20 meters. Boots fill with water. Leeches fatten unseen. Rifles must be wiped again and again to keep rust from blooming overnight. Bravo Company sits dug in on a muddy slope, miserable and hungry. Even those who once joked about potatoes and gravy now chew cold rations in silence. Hot food is impossible out here, with the weather choking the sky and grounding half the air assets at Chu Lai. Men sit beneath ponchos draped like funeral cloth, their backs against mud walls, their thoughts drifting between fear and memory. Ruiz, soaked and shivering despite the heat, hunches beneath his poncho. A single thought plays in his mind like a looped whisper. "We'll get chow again tonight." He used to say that every day. He doesn't say it now. Not after the ambush. Not after the letters home about Carter. Not after the medevac flights came back shredded. He closes his eyes and remembers steam rising from a meal. The memory hurts. North of them, Min moves through the mountains like a shadow. His strike unit now works in detachments, fanning out across likely landing corridors. The terrain is harsher here, and resupply less frequent. The Americans dig in. Min and his men dig in too, but hunger haunts them like a constant ghost. They boil vines and stalks. They chew rice so stale it tastes like chalk. Hot meals are a myth in these hills. Some nights, when the cold grips his bones and the smell of wet soil invades his sleep, Min remembers the ridiculous sight of rising steam in the jungle. He had hated it. He still hates it. But he also knows it changed him. He now studies helicopters the way a sniper studies a scope reticle. He knows their approach angles, their rotor signatures, the way the jungle reacts to their arrival. He has become a student of his enemy's wings. April 6th, 1967. Weather breaks. A clear dawn opens over Hill 482. The jungle is steaming, dripping, hissing. Bravo Company receives its signal, resupply inbound. Ruiz hears the distant thump, thump, thump and feels tension instead of relief. Grant orders the men into defensive positions. Claymores are checked twice. M60 barrels are unwrapped. No one jokes. No one relaxes. Gunships sweep the valley first, strafing potential ambush ridges. Minutes later, the Huey descends toward a freshly selected, hastily cleared patch of ground. When the skids hit the mud, the men do not crowd forward. They move in staggered approach, weapons out, eyes scanning. Metal containers hit the ground. Steam follows. Not meatloaf this time. Chili and biscuits, coffee in large thermal vats. For a moment there is quiet awe, but not the innocent kind. This time the awe is mixed with grief, memory, suspicion. Ruiz lifts a spoonful to his mouth and pauses. It smells good, but he hesitates. Grant sits beside him and says quietly, "Eat, Ruiz. We stay strong or we break. I lost friends too, but they didn't die so we could starve." Ruiz exhales. He takes a bite. As the warmth spreads through his stomach, he realizes something. The Huey delivery system is not just logistics. It is belief. A belief that they can push deeper, last longer, and still live like human beings instead of animals. The hot meal is not comfort. It is continuation. Far away in a POW camp outside Da Nang, Corporal Nhu sits with other captured NVA. They are fed twice a day. Broth, rice, sometimes meat. It is more than they had in the field. But whenever he receives a tray, he thinks of two truths that now live in his mind like brothers who refuse to speak. The Americans are not weak. The Americans are not invincible. They suffer. They adapt. They bleed. They feed their war with engines and steel, but they still bleed. At night, Nhu dreams of steam in the jungle, and sometimes he hates that the memory warms him. Back on Hill 482, Ruiz finishes eating. The Huey lifts away. The sound shrinks into the sky. The men clean up quickly. No lingering, no complacency. They move before the jungle can swallow the echo. Ruiz shoulders his pack and falls into formation. His strength returns, not only to his muscles, but to his will. He now understands the truth on his side as well. They don't eat hot meals because they're spoiled. They eat them because this war is long, and men cannot fight on emptiness. Whether they wear jungle boots or Ho Chi Minh sandals, whether they sleep under ponchos or in tunnels, whether they fight with helicopters or willpower, every soldier is fed by something. For Americans, it is fuel, strategy, and hot food flown to the front. For the NVA, it is endurance, ideology, and hunger that hardens resolve. Two different fires, same battlefield. The jungle will outlast them all. May 2nd, 1967. A US POW compound, Da Nang. The camp is quiet in the evenings. No gunfire, no rotor wash, no jungle rot stink. Just rows of canvas tents, chain link fences, and guards who walk with rifles at low ready. Corporal Nhu sits at a metal table beneath a floodlight that glows like an artificial moon. He has spent weeks being questioned, weeks being fed, weeks seeing something he never expected to see in war. Routine comfort. A tray slides in front of him, rice, vegetables, a ladle of meat stew. He nods in thanks, eats slowly, and thinks of his old unit moving through the highlands, eating cold, eating little, eating quietly. The food in front of him is not a feast, but it is hot, predictable, regular. He closes his eyes and remembers the first time he smelled American food in the jungle. How it enraged him, how it confused him, and how it made him confront a truth he had never considered. His enemy did not fight the same kind of war he did. Not weaker, not stronger, just different. He finishes the tray and stares through the fence at the distant hills. There are many ways to fight, he whispers in Vietnamese, but in the end, all men hunger. The same evening, 40 miles away, Bravo Company rests in their perimeter. They sit in a shallow depression ringed with claymores and listening posts. No music, no fires, no noise beyond whispers, but their bellies are full. A resupply run arrived hours earlier, fast, quiet, well covered by gunships. The new doctrine works. The new tactics hold. Private Ruiz leans back against his pack and writes a letter on damp paper. Ma, you asked what the food tastes like. Some days it's terrible, some days it's good, but it's always hot, and that matters out here. You wouldn't believe how much it matters. It keeps us standing. It keeps us human. Across from him, Sergeant Grant sips lukewarm coffee from a tin and watches the tree line. The memory of the ambush will never fade, but something else has grown in its place. Respect. Not for ideology, not for leaders or policy, but for the men on the other side who fight through mud and hunger and endless marching, just as his men fight through fear, exhaustion, and loss. 2 wars, same soil, same cost. Weeks later, the war rolls on. Hueys will burn again. Hueys will land again. Sometimes they will save lives. Sometimes they will scatter them. Min will continue stalking landing zones until fate, artillery, or exhaustion claims him. Ruiz will continue patrolling slopes and river valleys until rotation or tragedy ends his tour. Neither man will ever know the other's name, yet each will carry the same ghost of memory. Steam rising in the jungle. The POW who once stared in disbelief at a dented thermos will tell the story years later. How his unit thought they were fighting men, trapped in the same mud they knew, only to discover an enemy who could fly in comfort, eat warm, heal fast, and strike anywhere. American veterans will tell their own version, how they once believed hot food meant safety, only to learn that the sky could still explode, that nothing in this war was untouchable, and that the jungle punished arrogance as brutally as hunger. Epilogue. Wars are remembered through battles, maps, and speeches. But soldiers remember something else. Tiny human details. A spoon in the dirt, a thermos in the mud, steam rising from a tray in a place where nothing should be warm. For one side, that steam symbolized American strength, logistics, industry, mobility, the belief that war could be supplied like a marketplace. For the other, it symbolized American vulnerability, predictability, routine, and something that could be targeted, interrupted, and bled. Neither side was entirely right. Neither side was entirely wrong. But they both learned the same lesson. You can feed a war with engines, or feed it with endurance. But in the jungle, every man still hungers.